All right, I'm here if you need me.
Okay. Have we started letting the public in yet? I don't see anybody.
Oh yeah, there is 8 people in here.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. This is a public meeting for Walton County on the Holiday Shores neighborhood pedestrian and drainage improvements. We have about 9 people that have signed in, and it is 11 o'clock. I think we'll wait another minute or two to see if anybody else joins us. And if nobody joins in the next minute or two, we'll go ahead and get started.
I would like to point out, this is Chance Powell with Walton County Engineering, that both Debbie and Kelsey are on Eastern time, so it's 10 o'clock Central time here in Walton County.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, let's do a sound check. Can everybody hear me? And there is a raise your hand function in this software if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. And I would suggest maybe everybody, if you can hear me, just raise your hand real quick and then put it back down, and then we'll know that we're not having any technical difficulties. You should also be able to see a slide, the first slide of the presentation on the screen. So if anybody cannot see or hear, you could just type a comment in there, and you can put your hands down now, and I think we'll go ahead and get started. We haven't had, well, we just had one new person join, but we'll go ahead and get started now. This is a brief presentation that's very similar to what was presented to your county commissioners. There is a little bit more detail in this one, and we've added some additional information about phase 1 and what that will entail. So we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Debbie Preble, and I'm with Kimley Horn. And with me also for this presentation is Kelsey Lewis, who's also a PE here with Kimley Horn. And I want to tell you about, we're working with Walton County and what we were hired to do. If you would go to the next slide, please. We were tasked to look at this area, which is the Holiday Shores platted neighborhood, not to be confused with Holiday Road or Forest Shore Road. This assessment we did was meant to include all of the platted Holiday Shores neighborhood, which is what's generally depicted on the map that you see here. And our scope of work included looking at 3 areas. We're looking at pedestrian improvements, and those will generally occur from Highway 98 going north. We're looking at drainage improvements because we are aware of some areas that were identified as having localized flooding in the area. And then last but certainly not least, we're looking at different projects that can be implemented to improve the quality of water that's discharged to your bay. So we did a feasibility study and a preliminary report that addressed these 3 areas. And so now I'll let Kelsey get into the details of what we did and what our recommendations are to the county, and we'll wind up with talking about the first phase that we're going to implement. Kelsey?
Thanks, Debbie. And so what you have on your screen here are the proposed pedestrian improvements within the area. So this map shows the 12 different sidewalk corridors that we evaluated. We evaluated 6-foot wide sidewalks, and the goal for these pedestrian improvements was to work within the existing right-of-way. So we put together conceptual plans as part of this feasibility study. The goal during design will be to minimize the wetland impacts and to avoid utility conflicts. And throughout these 12 corridors, what we did is we put together 4 typical sections, and I'll go through the details of those here on the upcoming slides. So our first typical section is a sidewalk with a relocated swale. So generally, these will be used in areas where there's a swale today, and the swale will just be shifted over to accommodate the sidewalk and the clear space within the edge or between the edge of pavement and this new sidewalk. So the swale will be relocated, but will still be within the existing right-of-way. The next typical section we took a look at using was a sidewalk with a storm pipe. And so with that, this was generally used in an area where there's a swale today, but there's not enough room to relocate the swale within the existing right-of-way. And the next typical section we looked at was a raised sidewalk with curb and gutter. So this is typically going to be used where there's a safety concern, where there's not enough room between the edge of pavement and between this proposed sidewalk. And so the sidewalk would be adjacent to the road with curb and gutter. And then last but not least, a typical section that's an at-grade sidewalk. So this would be in an area where there is not a swale there today, there's no known localized flooding, and we have an at-grade sidewalk that's separated from the road by about 6 feet and then ties back in to the existing grade. So as Debbie mentioned, we looked at stormwater as well. And so we evaluated 9 different sites. We did a desktop review for these stormwater improvement sites. And of those 9 sites that we took a look at from a desktop point of view, we took 8 sites and evaluated those further and performed water quality analysis on those 8 sites. So the analysis that we performed from a water quality perspective took into account the annual rainfall for the area and the land uses associated with each of the drainage basins running to each of these sites. Of those 8 sites, 2 to 3 alternatives were developed for each site. And so those are water quality improvement alternatives. And as you can see on here, we do show the outfall locations, or which sites are outfall locations where water directly discharges to the bay. Just for context, this one right here is Hagen Park, and then down at Legion Park over here, you can get your bearings. So as Debbie mentioned, there are identified localized flooding areas. We evaluated 4 areas as part of this project, but we do know that there's many other localized flooding areas within the project area. And so we reviewed Pritchard Road, Mariner Way, an easement over off of Crest Drive, and then over at approximately 641 Bayshore Drive. So going back to the stormwater improvement, so we put together a water quality improvements decision matrix. And in that decision matrix, we had things that were evaluated for each of the alternatives, such as potential wetland impacts, the maintenance requirements for the improvements that we were proposing for each of the sites, the need for property acquisition, whether or not the county already owns the parcel where the stormwater improvement was, or whether there's an easement located in that area, a cost estimate associated with each of the water quality improvement alternatives, and then the nutrient removal amounts, how much nitrogen, and total phosphorus could be removed with the alternative that we were proposing on implementing. And then the cost per pound of nutrient removed. So that took into the account amount of nutrients, but over the life of the proposed improvement. And with this matrix, we put together a grading scale. So grades A through D, with grade A being a stormwater improvement that was implementable with high total nitrogen and total phosphorus removals, and D on the other end of the spectrum that was difficult to implement and had low total nitrogen and total phosphorus removals. So our recommendation to the county and in the feasibility report was to implement all sites with a grade A. So that brings us to the proposed phase 1 project. So as part of phase 1, and I'll have a map here in a minute, but site 4 and site 6 were identified as proposed phase 1. So there's going to be stormwater improvements proposed as well as pedestrian improvements. So site 4 was at Legion Park, and the alternative that was the grade A alternative was converting the dry pond to a wet pond, generally within the same pond footprint that's out there today. Site 6 included adding a nutrient separating baffle box with an upflow filter that's going to remove nutrients, the total nitrogen and total phosphorus that I talked about before it discharges to the bay. And then paired with site 6, we'll have pedestrian improvements that will run along Forest Shore and then along Shore Drive up to site 6. So on the next slide, we'll get into the typical sections a little bit, but this sidewalk right here is going to run along the north side of Forest Shore, cross over Shore Drive, and then run along the south side of Shore Drive. The baffle box that I mentioned is going to be located on the north side of Shore Drive. There's an existing drainage easement out there today and an existing pipe that discharges to the bay. So really, we're just retrofitting that pipe to remove nutrients before it discharges to the bay, which is the route that it goes today. And so I had mentioned the pedestrian improvements along Forest Shore and Shore Drive. I have the typical sections here. So the majority of the sidewalk will just be an at-grade sidewalk with a small little V swale to direct water so that it's not ponding on the sidewalk or, causing any issues in the adjacent yards. And then that's along Forest Shore and Shore Drive. And then in some instances along Shore Drive, there is a swale and there is some cross drains that are out there today. So with that, the swale will be relocated within the existing right-of-way. We've taken a look at generally where the right-of-way line is, and that's the typical section that seems to fit best. The existing cross drains that are out there, those will remain or be shifted over, and we'll look at those on a as-needed basis during design once we have survey. And with that, we'll open it up for any questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and then Jason can unmute you and you can speak. And if you do have any additional questions or comments or want to send information or photos to the county, we have the email address that you can send those to. Please make sure you use the subject line Holiday Shores so that we can make sure it gets paired with this project.
And we're particularly interested in any photos you might have of localized flooding. And if you do take any localized flooding, please indicate the date at which you took the photograph. So it looks like Donna Johns has her hand raised, if we would like to start with her. It looks like you're unmuted, Donna, if you have a question. Okay, I'm not able to hear Donna Johns if she's asking a question. Can any of the other panelists hear her?
No, it seemed like she's not, her mic's not picking her up.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear her either.
Well, let's give her a few minutes to maybe work out her technical difficulties, and we'll go on to the next person on the list. I guess that's Stratman.
Hi, this is Wes Wyrick.
Yes, can hear you.
Hey, yeah, I live right next to Hagen Park. I'm at 582 on Shore Drive, and looking at your initial drainage proposal there, one of the things I don't think that the county considered last time, and is a huge factor in this, Shore Drive is a natural boundary. from anything coming from the south going to the north. And the cross flow there is at Holiday. And that's one of the points where it goes over, but right next to the park. And then the only other place that it can get out is down at, you call it Site 8, I believe. And so all that water that comes in along Shore Drive goes underground, and the underground flow pools up right next to, in my neighbor's yard. He's got a lower yard, and the water doesn't go down the swales. It comes, the underground flow is what's flooding us over there. And all that water that's coming off of Forest Shore, Hidden Lakes, all that stuff that comes through, that's where we have the biggest flooding problem. And when I was talking to Charlie Cotton and to Chance, this seems like the solution is it's all trying to get to the two outlets at Hagen Park and over there at Site 8. And there's several lots that are open right now to the east on Shore Drive. And I put a note out also and next door for neighbors. I've got several neighbors that said they'd like to get more information about getting right of way or giving a right of way so that you guys can go through their lot to get more flow out to the bay. But that's the main cause of our flooding down there. And I've been living with it for 20 years. And when they did the last project, and we flood on a regular basis, and I sent photos to Charlie and Chance. And this last one, all of our sewage pump station is overflowing. It's covered in water, and so we get sewage coming up from that. So that's one of the issues down there that I didn't see you guys address. But that seems like it would be the obvious fix, to take that, instead of having two outlets, to have multiple outlets along there. It would diffuse better. And the second issue that on the Healthy Bay side, if you look at the Google photos of Hagen Park and the water out there, right now I can barely get my boat out because there's so much silt flowing out from Hagen Park. And it's also where we get all of the blooms, the polyp blooms out there from all the nitrates coming out of yards, because there's no filtration out there. It's just going straight out. But it needs to either be dredged or something out there, because it's gone up probably, I'm guessing, a foot to a foot and a half in the last year of silt coming up.
Okay.
So
Appreciate the information. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I've captured everything you mentioned, and certainly that's something we'll have more discussions about. And to make sure I've understood and summarize, you're talking about the potential to add additional outfalls between Site 7 and Site 8, and then also you're interested in some nutrient removal from the bay via dredging some of the silt out. Is that?
Well, nutrient, but the problem is all these yards out here got fertilized, and there's only if you look at this thing, it's instead of having two outlets, if you can have multiples, it'll stop the localized flooding through there, because Chance will tell you that the drops, they don't have the drops available out there due to the elevation. And so when you guys get ready to start doing this, I'm sure they can go through, and the engineering wise, it looks great. But this last one they did, the drops were never there. And so our water table is actually artificially raised when we get rains out there. And so the water table is actually coming up through my neighbor's yard. And that's the reason that these 72-hour storm swales stay filled year round almost. That's where when it rains, that's the water table you're seeing in the swales. So they violated the 72-hour rule. The other things I'd like to just throw in there for discussion that I've talked to Donna and I met with Chance and Charlie Cotton on is, when you guys are doing this, on a side note, and it's outside the scope of the project, but just for neighborhood discussion, the county's been turning off street lights out there, and according to the sheriff's department, if it's a county right of way, county street, they should be putting street lights in. That's one issue. And the other one that we were talking about last week, and I talked to Chance about, was we have above ground electrics out here, and by Florida code, built within, I think it's 2 miles of the coastline, it's supposed to be underground. The county is going to be going through and doing extensive ditching on this thing, and it makes perfect sense to go through at the same time to get Gulf Power and the state and FEMA involved and throw down some conduit for our utilities out there for the electric. And we haven't explored that yet, but it seems like a logical follow-on. And I understand it's outside the scope of your project, but just for the neighbors, my initial research on this looks like if this did go through, there would be an additional cost to the homeowner to do the connect up. And when I got from the FEMA site, somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 per house to run the lines from the street to the house. But it would certainly improve the recovery from hurricanes when they come through. And the initial look when I was doing it online said about every 2 hurricanes when they have to restore the power lines will cover the cost of putting these things underground for the homeowners. So it's FEMA said this is one of the things in their mitigation strategy to avoid having to redo power lines. And so just for the county to coordinate with Gulf Power and maybe with the other neighbors and see what the feelings are on.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. And I think we are recording this meeting, and I've taken a lot of notes while you were talking. So if that's all you have, I think we'll go on and see if Donna Johns has been able to work out her technical difficulties and is able to talk with us.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
Oh, good. I don't know what happened the first time. I was just going on and on. Anyway, first, I want to thank you very much. I really appreciate the fact that you have gone to the trouble to do this, because I've been in the area 20 years and it is much, much needed. We have continually gotten, just like everywhere else, the more development, the more stormwater problems that we do have. I noticed that you did mention that both Site 4 and Site 6 would be the first 2 that you would be working. And I was wondering, what kind of time frame are we looking? Do we have any idea at this point?
Yes, ma'am. The funds for design and permitting have been allocated for the current fiscal year. So I believe we will probably start the design and permitting work in the next month or 2. And I would expect that would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to complete. And then I am not sure if any construction money has been programmed for this year. I believe I understand that the construction money will be programmed for next year. And if there's anybody on the county that wants to add to that.
Yeah, this is Chance Powell with Walton County Engineering. Our plan moving forward here is to fund most of these improvements with TIF dollars from the TIF budget. Our plan would be to identify the phases of the project. We would, in the first year, design and permit a phase, and the following year, request funding from the board for the construction of that phase to be built. So, this year, the first phase there, Sites 4 and 6 would be designed, and then the end of this year, for budget of next year, we would budget for the construction of that, and then we would jump along in following years. Also, next year we would have phase 2 would be designed and permitted. That's the request, and obviously we're forecasting a budget that has to be decided and approved by the board, but that's staff's plan at this time. Obviously, if it's at the board's discretion if they wish to not go that route, but that's our plan.
Chance, can you tell me what if the board does agree with everything and you get the funds that are needed, what kind of projected end date are we looking at? Is this going to be like a 5-year, 7-year, or less? Do you have any idea?
I think 5 to 7 years is probably a pretty good bet. I would hope that we could do it sooner, but again, it would all be based on funding. If for some reason the TIF budget were to be increased, due to increased revenues, then I would hope that the project could be accelerated with respect to schedule. However, that being said, if the budget is cut, then it may take longer. So just know that really all we can do is go 1 year out, and we know about 1 year out. And right now that phase 1 is budgeted for design, and like Ms. Breville said, we'll get started on that here very soon, and then continue with our plan as long as we're allowed to.
Sounds great. Is there anything out there where we could go to try to get grant money?
I believe there is, and with this initial preliminary engineering assessment completed, and with phase one design underway and already budgeted, I think that we'll have the opportunity to rank higher on grant opportunities, and we are exploring those opportunities, and we'll apply for them as they become available.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. I do want to say that I do have a lot of pictures that I've taken over the years, and I'm sure that that the dates are on them as well. So I will forward all of those to you too, because as Wes was mentioning, on Shore Drive, that water just, I mean, is immense. It's just, what's there currently cannot handle the stormwater that we have. And I know that way over and outside of my area, but still in the area we're looking at on Dominica Court over there, I know that one street with one cul-de-sac, they've got standing water in there every time it rains. That's about the 72-hour issue as well. I mean, a lot of rain, those yards are full of water. Those fences have rotted because of it. And I'm really happy to see some movement on this. Thank you very much, all of you, for everything you're doing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Johns. Do you have any other questions or comments you'd like to add before we go on to the next person?
No, thank you. Not at this point, not at this time.
Okay. And someone identified as JJ has their hand raised. Can we unmute? JJ, you're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, John Jordan, my wife Anita, and I live a few houses down from Wes. And I'd like to echo his assessment of the flooding over there. And it does continue down all the way toward our end of the street in the ditches. It stays there for days and days. And Chance mentioned something also about phase two. We got a slide of phase one, but is there a phase two out there where the sidewalk continues past site 6?
Well,
Maybe?
certainly there will be a phase two, but we haven't determined what phase two will consist of yet.
Okay. We're on board with Wes's suggestion of trying to find some places to maybe make some more sites to drain the water off into the bay, and something to get the water out of the ditches in our front yards is good. And also, it also stays in the ditches fairly deep on the lots that are not built on, that are just on the north side of the road, but it just sits there growing mosquitoes and all kind of stuff. But we appreciate you guys' work on this, and especially Wes for spearheading this thing with Donna too. But we just like to say we're on board with it.
This is Chance again. I wanted to mention that, looking at future phases and how they will be identified, and, a priority, so to speak, of where we'll go next. Our goal is to, where can we make the most impact with respect to water quality improvements and provide the greatest benefit from a pedestrian connection opportunity at the same time. Obviously, those two efforts would take place at the, in the same project area, project limits for individual phases. I would imagine that the next phase would most likely start at Highway 98 in the intersection with Holiday Road and run down, probably carry us down to Hagan Park at Site 7. That would have the opportunity to make the pedestrian connection from all the pedestrian improvements that DOT is currently making with the 6-lane project on Highway 98. It would get us to another one of the larger outfalls within the project area, and then from that point we would start branching out and making connections with the pedestrian facilities and the drainage collection and conveyance systems within the project area.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey,
thanks a lot.
Mr. Jordan, did you have anything else before we go on to the next person?
No, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yes. So it looks like J. Lee Davis has their hand raised. If you would unmute yourself, we're ready for you.
Hi, this is Brandon, Jay's husband. I live over at 585 Forest Shore, and I just wanted to see if there was any future plans or phases to improve the drainage on Forest Shore, in particularly improving the swells or potentially installing sidewalks on that road. Considering the phase one design, it would be cutting into Shore Drive and not extending into Forest Shore, furthering it west. But is there any kind of time frame that would be talked about or discussed to improve that?
Mr. Davis, this is Chance again. You're located in between Shore Drive connection to Forest Shore and Holiday Road intersection.
Yes.
I'd like for you to know that, you know, the issues that we identified and met with you about recently, we've got some drainage improvements scheduled for you within the next few weeks, where we'll be doing some I guess short-term drainage relief for you in that area of Forest Shore there in the next few weeks. I believe the sidewalk connection and the overall drainage improvements for that area in between the Shore Drive intersection and the Holiday Road intersection would be at some future phase beyond 1 or 2. So you know that I could see maybe phase 3, the sidewalk connection continuing all the way down Forest Shore, just because that then would connect with the improvements done during phase 1 and 2. You know, pushing into the project area with the pedestrian improvements from Highway 98, and then that would connect the gap that we had then created between phase 1 and phase 2. So you follow what I'm saying there with?
Yeah, yes, sir. That makes sense.
Short-term improvement there, and then long-term improvement, looking at 3 years out for the sidewalk improvement.
Okay, I mean, no, that makes sense. I appreciate it. I was just curious, you know, with the drainage, and that answers my question. But the sidewalk improvement, I know, would be major for you know, a lot of the homeowners who do live on Forest Shore Drive, considering the amount of traffic we get, especially in the afternoons when 98 kind of buckles up, and a lot of people that live in the area seem to use Forest Shore as a back road. So, I mean, I have 2 kids personally, and it's not something I would typically feel comfortable letting them go play in the front yard or the driveway, having the amount of traffic we see in the afternoon. So I know the sidewalks, I think, would definitely be an improvement.
Okay. Do you have anything else for us before we go on to the next person?
That'll be it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple people that have raised their hands that have already spoken once. So if you guys can be patient, I'd like to give a person who hasn't had a chance to ask questions or comment yet a turn, and that would be Tracy. If we could go to Tracy. Tracy, you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Hello?
Hey, yeah, Tracy, we can hear you.
Okay, great. This is a question sort of following up on Mr. Davis's question there, addressed to Chance Powell. What are the plans for the potential road through the golf garden, and will the sidewalks connect all the way down Forest Shore to the Walton Way before that is done?
Actually, I can answer that question because I'm working on that Walton Way project as well. But could you state your whole name and tell us where you live before I address your question?
Oh, sure. My name is Tracy Hook, and I live at 11 Walton Way.
Okay. So we're working on another project aside from this Holiday Shores project to extend Walton Way through Golf Garden. And the phase we're working on is going to extend Walton Way. You can see there is a sidewalk shown on the segment of Walton Way that it's south of Forest Shore Drive. And that sidewalk will extend through Walton Way, ultimately all the way to 98. And what we are working on now is just the segment of that road that's on county-owned property, which extends through the north portion and over the wetlands.
Hey,
Okay,
this is Chance Powell. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, okay, so my question is, will the sidewalks on Walton Way and Forest Shore come before the road?
So my thoughts are is that right now we're under design on that road. And if the construction of that road occurs before the sidewalk is completed on Forest Shore to Holiday Road, that sidewalk would be included in the Walton Way roadway project. So what we would want to do is make sure that there was pedestrian connection between the north end of the Walton Way connector all the way back to Holiday Road.
Okay. And are you saying that the rest of the road through the non-county owned property is on hold, that's not currently being considered?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Are you saying that the rest of the proposed extension of Walton Way through the non-county owned part of the Golf Garden, is that off the table for right now?
No, ma'am. So the developer that retained the ownership of the remainder of the Golf Garden property is working on, they're incorporating the design of that road with a design on their property, knowing that they have the right of way is already there, dedicated to the county across that property. However, their site would connect to that road, and then we've provided them with the profile and alignment of the road north of them. They're designing to connect into that. Either that portion of the road will be built when they develop, and that will be a function of their mobility fee type contribution or proportional fair share contribution, whichever is in place at that time. Or if the county wishes to have that road built before the developer is wishing to build it, we'll go ahead and build it to complete the connection. It's really it's
I thought that there was a time limit from the FDOT that the road had to be built within a certain amount of time to get that.
So initially, DOT there was a request for a signal at Driftwood Road, which is south of Highway 98. Initially, DOT gave us the sort of a I don't want to say an ultimatum. They sort of put conditions on that signal. And one of the conditions was that after the signal was completed, the roadway had to be built within 5 years. DOT has come back and said they want that road in before they allow that signal to be constructed. So really there is no time restriction now, other than the signal won't be allowed to be installed on Highway 98 until the roadway connection is made from 98 back to Walton Way.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. That's great.
Yes, they sort of put a hand out to us and then they pulled it back. And we're just working with it the best we can.
Okay, super. Thank you.
No more questions for you?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, and I think, Wes, you have your hand up again. If we could get him unmuted.
Hi, Wes Wyrick again.
Yes, sir.
Anyway.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, just one thing. Maybe you can distinguish this when they get ready to make the final proposal. But before, the last drainage project was 20 years ago, which has been kind of a disaster for us over in Shore Drive. Two issues popped up. Is that goes to the water quality side. One, we had there's still active septic tanks all along this development, and when we started looking into this, the swamp. We have natural springs, and right now one of the best examples is right over on Holiday Road, at that second bend as you go to the north. There's a swamp drain that comes out of there, and a good portion of the water that goes down Holiday is unfiltered straight out of the swamp. We have the same problem over on Walton Way. That's not really storm water, but this is natural springs that are popping up that's just bringing stuff out of there. And the county environmental health folks said, yes, this is contaminated with fecal matter that's going out. So this kind of goes side by side to the healthy Bayside, and I didn't hear you guys address that. So is this going to be, if you guys go to do this, is this going to be new stormwater, or is this going to, I mean, I heard fresh look, so I'm assuming it's going to be a new project as far as regulatory wise. Could you comment on that?
Well, the project that we're looking at does not address septic tanks or drain fields, and does not include, it's not a septic to sewer project per se. Now, to the extent that I think you said you've observed groundwater bubbling out of the ground that then flows over land.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of those.
That groundwater has contamination from drain fields. That groundwater will be captured in the stormwater water quality improvement measures that we have in place. So even though it's not a wastewater project, it's not a septic to sewer project, if in fact you do have contaminated groundwater that is then flowing, bubbling up and flowing over the surface, it will be captured by the stormwater systems and will be subject to the same nutrient removal that the other stormwater is.
I'd like to just add there too that our environmental department at the county is looking for grant opportunities to take those septic systems to sewer, and you know it's in all the areas surrounding the bay, but that is being considered. Again, as Debbie said, septic sewer is not a part of this project per se, but there, you know, the stormwater improvements, water quality improvements here will help with that. It just it's not intended to take individual septic systems offline.
Yeah, the only thing I was trying to bring up there is the on Holiday Road, and also coming off Holiday Road, and also back there on Long Lake where it cuts through. Bill McBride's place was one of the places where that swamp water was, when we get rainfall, it all floods through from right there, and that's all coming. And there's the natural springs back there that flow 24/7, and so it's not a stormwater issue. It's a swamp spring issue that just turns into a flood issue later. But that's where that's coming from. It's coming, that whole wet area back there is yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That all flows. There's only two outlets that I know of. One goes right down Holiday, and the other one comes through the Long Lake area, crosses Forest Shore, comes down to shore, and that's where it floods over there. That's a part of the issue also.
Okay.
All right. It doesn't look like anybody else has their hand up. We do have another approximately 15 minutes that was scheduled for this meeting. Miss Johns has her hand up again. If you would unmute her, please.
Hi, I just have a quick question. You had a slide up earlier that depicted the different sites. Can you place that back up there again, please? Yes,
Is
that
this
one.
the one you're talking about?
Yes, it is. Chance, on site 1, isn't that the property that they're looking to develop right now?
I believe that's the site that they're looking to get a land use change on.
Okay, good, because they want to develop on it. If they develop on, and it's a potential stormwater improvement location, what kind of impact does that have?
Oh, well, that was a
And
site we
Miss-
looked at,
Go ahead.
but we did not make a recommendation to implement anything on that site.
Yes,
Okay.
so Ms. Johns, we did a desktop review. That was one of the nine sites we did a desktop review on. And then of those 9, site 1 did not have further analysis done on it.
Okay, at this point, correct? I mean,
Ms. Johns, I can remember talking to Miss Lewis and Miss Preble about this. Was the location of that site, the grades, and the opportunity to get stormwater to that location for treatment, and then continuing it on ultimately to outfall to the bay. The hydraulics just simply didn't work to provide the benefit that would be needed to justify the purchase of that property.
okay. Chance, have you looked at purchasing any other property, any other lots close by to do the retention ponds to hold stormwater?
I think site 2 was the only other one that really considered, but there is some opportunities there. Is that correct?
Yes, so both site 2 and 3 are not currently county owned. And so that was evaluated as part of this feasibility study.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else with their hand up. Is there anybody else that would have a question before we conclude the meeting? Ms. Johns, your hand is still up. Did you have something else you wanted to say? Nope, oh. I guess not. So what I would like to wrap things up with just kind of a little bit of a summary. We are going to start the design and permitting on phase 1 in the next month or so, and expect that to take approximately 6 months to complete. And we are looking forward to construction of phase 1 if the funding becomes available in the next fiscal year. And we'll begin designing subsequent phases after that. I would also like to encourage you, if you would please go to the last slide where that email address, if you think of questions after the meeting's over, or if you have photographs of localized flooding to share with us, there is on the screen is the email address that you can use for that. And ask you, please include the words Holiday Shores in the subject line, and that will ensure that the information ultimately gets sent to us. And also, if Wes is still on the line, if you mentioned having a photograph of where the water's bubbling out of the ground, that would be helpful if you would send that photograph as well. Are there, if there aren't any other questions, Chance, is there anything else you'd like to say before we conclude the meeting?
Yeah, I'll just say, thanks for everybody attending, and look forward to the information that we receive on that email address there. I feel like this went very well, and I hope everybody got some benefit out of it. And I know we will, and look forward to moving into the phase 1 detailed design and future phases. I think this is a great benefit to the area. Something that we can all appreciate.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for participating, and I guess still not seeing any hands raised. I guess we're ready to conclude the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Kelsey. And we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.